We aren't good. We are simply well watched. We live among the ruins of dead concepts, pretending we still believe in them while calculating the risk of every step to avoid punishment. But what is the difference between the man who chooses the good and the man who merely fears the whip? In this meeting, we will cross the veil of appearances to confront what remains of the foundations of our society. If the ancient pillars of reason and progress have crumbled, what maintains order today? Conscience or the fear of punishment? We are going to discover how spiritual awakening emerges precisely at the moment we stop propping up ruins and begin to inhabit our own truth, free from conceptual zombies that can no longer guide us. Why do we still feel exhausted, even when we follow all the rules of a progress that was promised to be infinite? The truth, as uncomfortable as it may be, is that we are trying to live in a building whose columns, reason, history, and the subject, collapsed a long time ago. We live in an era of conceptual zombies, ideas that no longer possess life or soul, yet continue to wander and demand our absolute loyalty. If you feel a strange emptiness when looking at the institutions and certainties around you, understand, it's not you who is broken, it is the foundation of modernity that has turned to dust. Perhaps you feel, in the silence of your personal journey, that yesterday's explanations no longer quench today's thirst. The promised progress has turned into fatigue, and the language we use no longer seems to capture the immensity of what vibrates in our chests. It is not that you are broken, it is that the scenery around you has expired. We are in a time of transition, where the awakening of consciousness requires us to stop being tenants of old dogmas and become the architects of our own spiritual truth. It takes courage to admit, many of our certainties have become conceptual zombies, empty forms that still demand our obedience even after the death of their original purpose. Recognizing these ghosts is the first step toward no longer being haunted by them. For, as we look around, we realize we no longer inhabit living homes, but rather a vast museum of ideas that we still insist on calling home. We walk through a museum of ideas that we still call home. Friedrich Nietzsche once announced that the old values were dying, but what we didn't foresee is that they would continue walking among us like specters. Subject, reason, progress. These words that were once compasses are now decorative ruins. They adorn our speeches, but they no longer support the weight of our existential anxieties. A conceptual zombie is an idea that has lost its soul but still imposes its will through social habit. We demand loyalty to models of life, success, and relationships that no longer produce life, only exhaustion. When presence is replaced by performance, we become prisoners of a structure that has already collapsed. As Jung taught, that which is not brought to consciousness manifests in our lives as fate or, in this case, as a shadow that pursues us. Modernity tried to domesticate mystery with reason, but the mystery remains, pulsing beneath the rubble. The invitation here is for deep contemplation. What in your life is authentic construction, and what is merely a ruin that you insist on repainting every day? The soul is in no hurry. It has rhythm, and the rhythm of the now asks us to recognize what has already died so that the new can, finally, breathe. And in this breath, in this pause between what crumbled and what is yet to be born, an inevitable question arises. If the foundations of our common home have turned to dust, what still keeps the roof over our heads? If it is no longer a living belief, what keeps us from collapsing? If the foundations of our common home have crumbled, what keeps the walls standing? For many, the answer is not love or understanding, but fear. We have created a morality that is, in reality, a system of containment. A morality founded on the fear of punishment, be it divine, social, or legal, does not transform the being. It merely muzzles it. Krishnamurti reminded us that a mind that obeys out of fear is a mind that will never be free to discover the truth. When we act correctly only because someone is watching, or because we fear judgment, we are not practicing virtue. We are performing a survival calculation. This is the illusion of order, a garden where the flowers are made of plastic so they never need care, only surveillance. Inner silence reveals an uncomfortable truth. If punishment disappeared tomorrow, who would you be? Performative spirituality often feeds on this fear, offering rigid rules to contain our wild and sacred nature. But real spiritual awakening is born when we realize that true order does not come from an external decree, but from an internal harmony that needs no whips to manifest. Emotional healing begins when we stop fighting our impulses out of fear and start illuminating them with the light of wisdom. When the light of wisdom dissipates the shadows of fear, calculation gives way to clarity. It is at this exact moment, where punishment loses its power over the soul, that we reach the turning point, the radical center where man ceases to be a survivor and becomes a conscious being. We have reached the turning point, the radical center where action divides. Two men can perform the same act of charity. Externally, the scenes are identical. However, one of them does it to avoid guilt or guarantee a place in heaven. That is calculation. The other does it because he recognizes himself in the other, because good is the only possible response for an awakened soul. That is consciousness. Calculation is an operation of the conditioned mind. Consciousness is an overflowing of the soul. As Alan Watts used to say, reality is not something you find, it is something you are. When you choose the good through consciousness, there is no effort, because you are not following a law. You are expressing your own nature. Reconnecting with this center requires us to cross the void left by the ruins of modernity. It is in the fertile void that the inner mage finds the compass that never fails, the compass of living ethics. All healing and all inner transformation begin with the acceptance of what hurts and the decision to act from a place of integrity, even if the world around you still demands the old theater of appearances. What if the pain you feel today, seeing the ruins, is the portal to the life you have always sought, based not on convenience, but on spiritual truth? This new life is not born from the denial of chaos, but from the courage to walk upon it with firm steps. For, when we look at the debris of modernity under this new light, what we see is not the end, but a fertile territory for what is authentic. When we look at the debris of modernity, we need not feel despair. Ruins are open spaces for the new. The end of a morality based on fear is the birth of an ethics based on light. You are not alone in this crossing. The universe hears you when you learn to hear yourself. I invite you, in this moment of presence, to do a small exercise. Imagine that in your hands there is a heavy rope. It represents all the conceptual zombies and fears you carry to appear good in the eyes of others. Feel the weight of this soulless obligation. Now, breathe in deeply, and as you let the air out, imagine that you simply open your hands. Feel the relief of releasing the invisible knot that bound your heart to external approval. What remains when the weight falls? What remains is your silent wisdom. What if true freedom is not doing what one wants, but becoming someone who only wants what is true? If these words touched something inside you, perhaps it is time to take another step on this path of reuniting with your inner truth. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to continue receiving content that nourishes the soul with presence and authenticity. Share in the comments what resonated with your heart. Your story might be the mirror someone else needed to find. If you are looking for a safe harbor, know that our community is the sanctuary where fertile silence is shared and deepened. Enjoy the posts on the channel. And, to continue expanding this field of presence, we suggest the video pinned in the card. May it be a source of inspiration on your journey. Peace and light.